let's talk about vinyl variants. Ahoy everybody, and welcome to this discussion video. And this is a response to a video I was tagged in on Instagram, and it's a video by Jimmy Barnes, who has his own VC channel, which I will put a link to below, and a video called Vinyl Variants, Has It Got Out of Hand? And it's a video that was actually prompted by myself. He watched my July vinyl update where I showed the multiple variants of the Taylor Swift album, also the Blur album, but he didn't mention those. And that sort of prompted him to get thinking about the number of vinyl variants. He also referred a lot to my lottery winners video, where I obviously showed the 23 physical variants of that were released to help it get to #1 in the charts. And he raised a few points, which I'm going to respond to and add my 2 pence to. Let me start by saying he was very complimentary about my channel in the video. Thank you, Jimmy. You know, at no point was he slagging me off for buying these variants or spending my money how it was all positive towards me. So no need for anyone to rush to my defense or anything. You know, he was merely stating his opinion, but at no point was he in any way defamatory about me. And as I say, he was actually very complimentary. Thank you, Jimmy. Okay, so the sort of points he were so the points he was making, perfectly valid, and ones that have crossed my mind. Some of them less so. But initially, sort of his first thing he was talking about was obviously the cost of these multiple vinyl variants. The Taylor Swift ones, I paid $42.99, I think they were, from Slice of Vinyl for three different vinyl variants. So that's the lilac, the orchid, and the violet variants. He went on HMV's website and they were charging $49.99 for them. So if you want all three, you're talking between 120 and 150 quid, depending on where you get them from. There's also CD on top of that, which I still haven't bought. I will be getting, but I still haven't bought that yet. Which all add up. Obviously, sticking to Taylor. And again, he wasn't, slagging off Taylor Swift in particular. It's just that was the example that came to, that prompted his video. If you look back at Midnight's, I ended up buying 5 different coloured vinyl of that. Was it 5? Four. I think 4 different coloured vinyl of that. I ended up getting 5 CDs, but then I ended up getting another 4 CDs because she then sold the signed versions. So I do understand, it gets expensive, and I'm fortunate that I'm in a position where I have quite a bit of disposable income. It's the way I've lived my life means that I don't have, I'm not married, I don't have kids or anything like that. I still live at home with my mum, so although I pay a substantial amount of keep, anything else is sort of mine to do what I like with, and what I like to do with it is buy physical media. So I appreciate I'm in a fortunate position where I can do this and I can buy these multiple copies. I do appreciate that for hardcore fans with less income, it is tough, because if they do want to collect everything, it gets expensive, or they have to make that decision not to collect everything, which can be heartbreaking if you are a hardcore fan. I do want to say at this point, although it happens quite a lot, because a lot of the artists who I am complete on have had quite a lot of releases, it is only a handful of artists who I am this complete on. Prince, obviously, Taylor Swift, Kylie, Robbie Williams, The Darkness to an extent. I'm trying to think who else it would be that I'd get every variant of. Trying to look. Lottery winners, obviously, sorry. Obviously, forgot them. That's about it, I think. So it's not, a huge amount. There's artists. I'm not talking here about getting same album on CD and vinyl. That's another argument that I'll get to in a minute. But for artists who release multiple coloured Sophie Ellis-Bextor. Artists release multiple coloured variants of the same album. Then Blur, I have on my new album, but most of the albums I haven't even got on vinyl yet. So I haven't really reached a decision about what will happen with them. But yeah, I'm talking about artists who release particularly multiple coloured vinyl variants of an album, or, different deluxe editions and normal editions and things like that. Most artists I will pick a variant, usually the colour that appeals most, and then maybe get the CD as well. But even then, a lot I will just get a CD. I will just get the vinyl. There's some artists who I haven't transferred over to vinyl yet. I'm just collecting the CDs still, and probably never will move over to vinyl. Stereophonics springs to mind. Manic Street Preachers. I've got a couple of there's box sets that came out that are mixed media, but otherwise everything I just get on CD. So I don't do this for every artist. It's just that Taylor Swift, particularly with all the re-recordings, has had a lot of releases over the last 2 or 3 years. So it looks like I'm, I have been buying a hell of a lot of her stuff, but that's purely because of the volume of releases that have come out. Again, Kylie, there's been lots of reissues and stuff. So, so it looks like I'm doing it more than I really am, if that makes sense. But as I say, he wasn't criticising me, as he said, as long as you've paid all your bills and everything, what you do with your excess money is entirely up to you, and, enjoy yourself with it, which is what I do. But yeah, I do understand that not everybody can afford to do that. And, if something happened and I didn't have the disposable income I've got now, and, particularly if Prince did a release and I had to choose what format to get, it would be heartbreaking for me. So, I do understand the difficulty of that. Some people just don't care. They just want a copy, or a copy and a CD copy. Fair play to you. I wish I had that attitude for all my artists, but, my favourites I like to be complete on. Second point he sort of raised is the cynicism behind it. As he pointed out, Taylor Swift, the releases are expensive. It's pretty much what I tend to call the Beatle tax. You buy a Beatles release, and it's normally a lot more expensive than a similar release by another artist. It's not just for Beatles, Stones is the same, The Who's the same, and then some, Michael Jackson, Taylor Swift, and there's a few other acts who you do tend to see a price that's just a bit higher than everybody else. It's because they got a huge fan base. They'll know they'll sell the material, and people will buy it no matter how much it costs, so they make a bit more money on it. Economically, it's how the world works, supply and demand. If, demand is high, price will go up. Or if something's limited edition and supply is low, price goes up. It is basic economics. There's then the more socialist argument that these are multi-millionaires, they don't need more money, they should price things lower, and support the people who have made them multi-millionaires by not ripping them off. That's another argument. It's an argument I tend to agree with, but at the end of the day, because I want these things, I will pay whatever they cost. The other, side of that, cynicism is for releasing multiple formats for chart position, which is obviously is what lottery winners did, and it worked. I can see both sides to that argument, particularly for, you know, not the mega stars, but, you know, lesser stars. And, you know, by that I'm even talking, you know, big household names, but not. So probably, well, Sophie Ellis-Bextor in the UK. She's a big star. Everyone knows who Sophie Ellis-Bextor is. You know, she's popular. She can headline festivals. She can, or if she appears at a festival and she's not headlining, she'll pack the crowd out. I was at the Isle of Wight festival earlier this year. She was on, like, you know, she was the first mainstream, well-known act on the bill, and pretty much the whole festival went to that stage to watch her. It was at capacity; they had to turn people away. So, you know, she's a star, but she's not monetary wise. You know, she won't be earning your Robbie Williams money, your Taylor Swift money, your Paul McCartney money. The way, you know, the music business has changed over the last few years with streaming. You know, artists make next to nothing off streaming. You know, it's less than a penny a stream. I think it's ridiculous. And that's without them having to pay to promote their music on streaming services, which we'll come to in a minute. I keep saying that, don't I? We'll come to it in a minute. You know, because they can't rely on record sales to make them money anymore. They have to make their money through touring, merchandise. What they do have to do is make sure that any record sales they have sort of are worthwhile. So if they can, you know, if they've got enough of a fan base who will buy 5 copies of the same album, then produce 5 copies of the same album, because that's what's keeping, you know, earning you the money to keep you going. You know, with the lottery winners, they really wanted a #1 album. They knew that if they produced enough versions of the same album, their fan base was big enough and strong enough, a lot of us would buy. I mean, I can't imagine many people bought all 23, but certainly lots of people would have bought 1 or 2 vinyl, 1 or 2 CDs, 1 or 2 or 4 cassettes, or, you know, a lot of their fan base would have bought multiple versions and bought the downloads as well, which is, you know, what I did, and that worked for them. They were a lot more reasonably priced. I mean, the initial bundle that I bought from Lottery Winners, which was 1 vinyl, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 different CDs and 5 different cassettes, was 70 quid. You know, it's not a lot of money. Obviously, you know, again, we go back to then people like Taylor Swift, where, you know, it's nearly that much just for one record. Certainly a record and a CD would cost that much. You know, again, the way the music industry works at the moment, you need, unless, you know, you've got the money to pay for your tracks to be promoted on Spotify. So, you know, all these acts who get to #1 on downloads alone and all that, they've paid a lot of money for Spotify and Amazon to promote that track, or, you know, or the album or whatever, so that it appears on multiple playlists at the start. So you select your playlist, and the first thing you hear is, well, the famous example was Ellie Goulding had a big Christmas hit with was it Oh Holy Night? Might be No Holy Night, but it's, you know, she recorded a Christmas song that was exclusive to Amazon, and it was a huge hit. I think it got to #1 in the download charts, and I think it, you know, was certainly top 10 UK, and that was because any Christmas playlist you put on, that was the first track you played, and even if you skip it after 5 seconds, it counts as a play. You know, so that was why, obviously, being an Amazon exclusive, Amazon would have paid for that, but other artists do it, or their record labels do it. They pay Spotify, Amazon, whoever, Tidal, to promote a particular track, and that's why it charts. So if you haven't got the money or the backing to do that, you're a smaller, lesser known band, the way to do it, to beat that, as Lottery Winners approved, as the Ratings have approved, multiple formats that your fan base is going to buy. Yeah, I said I'd touch upon the CD thing. I personally, for a long time, I was only collecting CDs. If it's an act who, I've been buying on CD for 20 years, but I like them enough that I also want stuff on vinyl, I'm still going to buy the CD because I've got their catalogue on CD. I don't want to stop getting their catalogue on CD. But I think a lot of people are like that. And also, there's people who want a CD to play in the car or, whatever, or to rip onto their computer, whatever reason. But they want the vinyl for the vinyl experience. So I think, it's less controversial to buy both the CD and the vinyl. And as I say, I've got acts I do that for. I've got acts I just buy vinyl for. I've got acts I just buy CDs for. The other thing he touched upon was the environmental impact of all these multiple formats of vinyl. The first thing that struck me, and this isn't a dig in any way, is more because of my hatred of the things, but he was saying this whilst surrounded by bloody Funko Pops, which to me personally, the biggest waste of plastic in the world, because I can't stand the things, as I say. But that's, I don't mean anything by that. It just struck me as slightly ironic. The plastic crisis and all that is largely down to single-use plastics, straws, carrier bags, things like that get used once, thrown away, become landfill, get trapped in the oceans and all that sort of stuff. Vinyl records and all the plastic associated with them, so, sleeves, inner sleeves, we all like to, well, I say we all, most of us like to protect our records by putting them in a plastic sleeve. We like to protect the actual vinyl itself by putting it in a polyline sleeve of some sort. Most of that stuff will be in use for many, many years. I'm sure most of us, certainly any of us who collect used records, have records in our collection that are 50, 60, 70 years old. They're not a problem environmentally because they've been used. If you like, they're being recycled. Although they're not becoming different items, but they're being used time and time again by different people. It's not a huge environmental thing. Lots of pressing plants now are using, whereas in the past the offcuts when they press a record would just get thrown away, now they get reused and turned into records. That's why you often hear of records being printed on virgin vinyl, because they make a point of not using those bits. That's brand new vinyl. So it isn't, I don't feel, I'm no expert, but I don't feel it is environmentally a huge problem. It's not single-use plastic. It's plastic that has and does last for years, and doesn't end up. Obviously, eventually, some of it will end up as landfill, but that's after it's had a long lifetime of being used and loved, or in some cases stored in people's attics. But you get the point I'm making. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much everything he was talking about. As I say, at no point was he slagging me off for collecting what I collect, or other people, and he, although he hasn't done it to the extent that I do it, where he will buy every format, he does buy multiple formats of albums, although mainly a vinyl and a CD. So it's all love. And I enjoyed the video. It's the first one of his I've watched. I will check out a couple more and probably subscribe. But as I say, I'll put a link below and urge you to watch. Interested, obviously, in anybody else's opinions. When I posted my lottery winners video, I had some negative comments, again, not towards me, but about the cynicism of releasing 23 physical formats to get a #1 single. But also people saying, fair play to them, it worked, nobody's forced to buy them all, which is my attitude, basically, is that they're there if you want them. If you don't want them, don't buy them. It's as simple as that. Nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. But yeah, as I say, interested to hear your views. Thank you, Jimmy, again, for the kind words you said about me in your video and prompting people to subscribe, and also for prompting this interesting discussion. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks.